Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone, back here again today with another episode of After the Buzzer, the show where I recap the NBA games from the night. And this could have been the final recap of the season, with the Dallas Mavericks having their back against the wall down at 0-3 at home, and the Celtics on the verge of a sweep, completing their dominant season and in particular playoff run to get themselves their 18th championship in franchise history and the first of this Tatum Brown era. It felt like it was probably going to be a sweep. I mean, the Celtics had been firmly the best team through the first three games, although Dallas was really good in their own right, so it made sense that they might come out here and take a game 4 to bring it back to Boston for game 5, and they did that. This is not the final recap of the season. The Mavericks did get a win in this series, but it wasn't just a win, it was an annihilation. The Mavericks not only showed up, they completely eviscerated the probable eventual champions in the Boston Celtics. They led by as much as 48 points in this game, won by 38, 122 to 84. They held the Celtics to just, I believe, 35 points it was at the end of the first half, the lowest first half point total, or I think overall the lowest half point total in the entire time that Joe Mazzulla has been coaching this team. They were locked in on both ends. And it was kind of annoying because I was sitting here wondering, why didn't they do this at any other point? They looked a lot more like the Mavericks team we saw throughout a majority of this run in this game than the Mavericks team we've seen so far in the finals. And it was everybody. You had Luka Doncic doing his typical thing, really stepping up defensively in particular. I mean, the offense was fantastic as always. 29 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals. Only played 32 minutes. The starters were out of this game by the time the fourth quarter rolled around. Shot 47%. Did go 0 of 8 from 3, which is uncharacteristic of him, but the big thing was the defense. Luka was way more locked in on the defensive end. I think he heard everybody chirping about how he was having one of the worst superstar defensive performances in the finals that anybody had ever seen, and yeah, it had been really bad leading up to this point. Specifically, like, Brian Windhorst really went in on him after game 3 with Scott Van Pelt on ESPN, and then Luka came out and had one of his better defensive games of the playoffs. He was really locked in on that end, wasn't falling asleep off ball, was way more locked in on ball. You weren't seeing the constant blow-bys that you were seeing in earlier games, and that's big because every time Luka got blown by, the defense was in immediate rotation. You're leaving shooters open, and for this Boston team, you can't afford to do that. It was way harder for them to get anything going. It wasn't just Luka, like Derrick Jones Jr., PJ Washington, Dereck Lively, Josh Green, Maxi Kleber, everyone who came in, Kyrie Irving, was contributing on the defensive end in some way. It was really impressive. They're going to need to keep this going for the rest of the series, and on the offensive end, Kyrie Irving also did not shoot well for 3, 1 for 6, but had 21 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists. You got a couple of threes from PJ Washington. Lively had 11 points, 12 rebounds. Hit a 3 in this game, by the way. The first three-pointer he's made in his entire career was just a catch-and-shoot corner 3, and he shot it like he had shot that a million times in the NBA. It was smooth. It went right in. Maybe he's going to turn to a stretch big here. They've now unlocked their secret weapon after going down 0-3. I don't know why he wasn't trying this previously. Maybe they were just feeling like, hey, our back's against the wall. We got to try something. Dereck Lively go out there and shoot a 3, and he nailed it. So maybe Dereck Lively's shooting big arc is underway. And then even like garbage time, like Tim Hardaway Jr. had 5 threes in a single quarter. Now joins Steph Curry and Ray Allen as the only players to ever do that in a single finals quarter, which is insane. Maybe that gets him going for a next game. Dante Exum was playing really well in this game. Really just a phenomenal team effort from the Mavericks, top to bottom. Not really anything I can complain about in this game on Dallas's side. And now, because they stole a game, the big conversation amongst everybody is, can the Dallas Mavericks be the team to finally come back from down 0-3 in a playoff series? Nobody has ever done it in the history of the NBA, never mind the NBA Finals. Of course, there was the Cavs 3-1 comeback, but that's the biggest extent that anybody's ever had. And I feel like this conversation is going to continuously come up because we nearly saw the Celtics do it last year, so it's fresh in everybody's mind. And it's just like, hey, if you get one game, then you build up some momentum, you get the second game, then you're back at home for game 6, and then you get to a game 7, and anything can happen in the modern NBA. And that is true. I do think a 0-3 comeback is more probable now than it's really ever been because of the variance we see in games. And you've seen it a lot throughout the Celtics run, where the Celtics have looked like the better team in all of their series pretty easily, but you have those games like game 2 against Miami, game 2 against Cleveland, and now this game where all of a sudden the other team can't miss, they start missing a lot of shots, variance wildly fluctuates, and suddenly the Celtics are losing by like 20 points in some of those other games. They're losing by nearly 50 here. It happens in the NBA. Really, any team can beat anybody on any given night. The hard part is doing that 4 times in a row if you're the Dallas Mavericks. Now, this is a really good team. Luka is one of the best players in the world, and this could be a game that builds them up some momentum and they continue to extend the series. But I just don't see it. I don't think the Mavericks have what it takes to come back from this, mainly because I just don't think the Celtics team is going to blow this lead. Now, I know they've choked a lot in the past, and they found ways to fall apart in big moments. I mean, in Game 3, they were up by 21 points in the fourth quarter, then the Mavericks cut it all the way to 1, and then they just barely couldn't shut the door. I mean, imagine how different this series would be if the Mavericks had just went ahead and made things happen in Game 3. They took advantage of that collapse, and now here we are where they blow them out, and suddenly it's tied 2-2 going back to Boston, and the Mavericks are now riding off some momentum. They're feeling good. The Celtics are kind of, they have to take this Game 5 at home. You don't want to go back to Dallas, giving them another home game where at this point they'd be 2-0 to potentially close you out. It puts a lot more pressure on Boston. Whereas now, yeah, they've got pressure on them, but they've got so many chances, and 2 of those games are going to be at home. There's no room for error if you're Dallas. You've got to go ahead and not only beat Boston 3 times in a row, which hadn't happened to them all season, you've got to do it 4 times in a row. You did it once. Can you do it 3 more times? And as much as I want to believe that something like this could happen, because imagine the drama if we even got to a Game 6, never mind a Game 7, but I just don't think it's that realistic. I do think it is more possible than ever, and at some point within the next 10 years, it has a pretty decent shot at happening, but I don't think it's going to happen here. This Celtics team, despite their reputation, has been too good on both sides of the ball. Like I said, have not lost 3 games in a row the entire year, have lost now 21 games on the entire season. I just don't think it can happen. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Mavericks continue to extend this a little bit. They've got some momentum. I, again, just wish they had shown a lot more fight like this in some of their other games. And I guess one thing that does go in their favor for potentially extending this series and maybe pulling off the impossible is that Kristaps Porzingis, I don't believe, is coming back. He was technically available today for the Celtics. Maybe he could have played if it didn't turn into a blowout, but I just don't think he's going to be ready to go. I don't think they want to risk it. They're up 3-1. They have so many chances to go ahead and get this done. They won Game 3 without him playing. Game 2, he got hurt, and so he didn't play a lot, and they were still able to get it done. Even in Game 1, where he was a big-time impact guy, maybe that was a game they still could have won because they ended up winning comfortably. So despite Kristaps making a massive difference, like there were a lot of times in this game, especially on the offensive boards, where Dereck Lively had 7, and they out offensive rebounded the Celtics 13-4. I feel like you could have really used Porzingis. You could have used him to slow down some of those Mavericks drives, because they were just getting everything. They were completely blowing by the Celtics on the perimeter, which hadn't happened at all in this series up until this point. They were finishing around the rim. Porzingis, I don't think would have helped the Celtics win this game. They lost by like 38 points, but definitely would have been a difference maker. So sure, losing him is big, but if you're the Celtics, you probably feel like you can still get this done. You don't want to risk that injury, any chance of him not being ready for the start of next season or further damaging that. So he probably isn't going to be back. Maybe the Mavericks do extend this thing a little bit longer, even if they don't, say they lose in Game 5 or Game 6 or whatever. I still am grateful for them for extending the series a little bit longer. It makes the finals a bit more interesting, gives us more to talk about. I'm just not ready for NBA basketball to be gone until October, or I guess depending on if you count preseason and summer league and stuff, obviously that will be coming beforehand. But regular season, real meaningful NBA hoops won't be back until October. So yeah, I mean, shout out to the Mavericks for going ahead and getting this done. I don't think they can pull off the 0-3 comeback, but hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is the ultimate cone curse here. I just don't see it happening. I think people are just getting a bit too caught up in the hysteria that is surrounding these 0-3 deficits ever since the Celtics went ahead and nearly did the impossible last year. This doesn't feel like a situation where we're going to see anything close to that. If I had to make my guess, I think Boston comes in and closes out in Game 5 at home. They did so, really slammed the door shut after those Heat and Cavaliers games. I think they do the same thing here, but hey, I mean, I guess anything's technically possible, and I would love for more hoops to happen. So shout out to the Mavericks for this performance. At the very least, this is a game where you got a finals win under your belt. You can build some momentum going into next year and say, hey, we got one against the Celtics. We had a lot of chances in Game 2 and 3. We just didn't have the experience. We weren't able to get it done. You make some tweaks to the roster, come back in and think of yourselves as still the team to beat in the Western Conference. You maintain that confidence, that momentum, and hey, maybe you're back here next year, but this time you actually get the job done. As for the Celtics, like I said, bad performances across the board. 3 of 12 from Jaylen Brown, 4 of 10 shooting from Tatum, 2 of 8 from Derrick White, 4 of 10 from Jrue Holiday, 5 of 14 from Peyton Pritchard. Just all over the place. I mean, again, the bench warmers were in pretty early in this game comparatively. They'll be fine. It's just one of those games the Celtics seem to have where they're not hitting their shots, they kind of fall apart, and in the NBA, it can really just snowball once you get in a deficit and the other team gets on fire. There's really nothing you can do. I think the Celtics will be fine. They'll bounce back in Game 5 and probably raise the Larry O'Brien. But for the moment, we'll have to just wait and see. And yeah, I think those are my overall thoughts on this game and where we're at in the series at the moment. Let me know down below if you think the Mavericks can pull off the impossible. What do you think the scenario would have to be for that to happen? Like, what potential situations could you see where we finally witness an 0-3 comeback? Do you think we see it at any time in the next like 5 or 10 years? Do you think it'll be beyond? Do you think it's just literally impossible? And yeah, I appreciate watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. I really wish the Mavericks had done all this earlier because we would have a lot more interesting series. Instead, it is a 3-1 deficit where I still think the Celtics are going to close this thing out. But yeah, appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.